Basically what we're looking at are some skills for what we call self-perfection. So developing attributes and ability. Primarily all geared around skills of self-preservation. So in order for you to deal with violence in a physical sense, you need to be fit, you need to be capable, you need to understand body dynamics, you need to have the ability to hit fucking hard, as just one example of developing attributes. Does that make sense? So the first module that we're going to look at relates to how do we get full body weight inside of striking, which is a great fundamental. Two ways of putting your whole entire body weight into and through a strike. It comes from what we call hip torque, where we turn our hips on this twirling type plane, as well as what's known as a drop step, where we step and drop body weight through the target as we hit it. Right? I'm going to give you a couple of drills that will start, warm you up, and give you cultivation towards that end. First of all, we're going to work what we call air training, which means you need no kick. And you're going to work right where you stand and shadow the movement, right? From there, we're going to take it to resistance, where we go to the bands. And then finally, we're going to translate those two things you've learned into impact, where you hit through the target. Everyone on the track with that?
Yes.
Right, so you don't need those, it's only a lot of spanner. You don't need that either, pulling guard. So it makes you feel better if you get them. Right. What I want you to do, right, is just blade your feet. So one fore and aft. So as if you were stood in a natural everyday position with unobtrusive position of the hands, what we know as the fence. Right? So bladed means one's forward and one is back. And primary one that's likely to be back is your dominant side. So 90% of the population right-handed, therefore want your right dominant side one step back. So your toe of your right boot should be in line with your left boot. That's a staggered step. That isn't it, because it's half of it. Bring that foot forward. This toe, you drew a line, comes across to that heel. Yes? That's a balanced brace position. Always incline your weight slightly forward, nose over toes, and I like to just a slight lift in my foot. This would be what's known as a passive position from which to operate. A passive guard. And the reason we need a passive, unobtrusive guard is because when we hit somebody for real in a live situation, we don't want to let them know that we're going to do it. We want to hit them from an unobtrusive platform that's deceptive. So when they wake up, the last thing they remember is they thought you didn't want to fight. You know what I'm saying? If you take that same position into what's called an active guard, all it would do is extend slightly, bend a little, and the hands would go from this to this. So if you can see, there's not a lot of difference between this, passive guard, and this, active guard, in terms of delivery of shots or defending from incoming shots. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yes or no?
Yeah.
Right. The unobtrusive position that we're going to work for is going to work first your right side. So what I want to give you is hip torque. So any type of shot coming straight through, into and through the target. Any shot coming around and into the target. And any shot with the lead hand coming backhanded around and into the target is fueled by hip torque. Right? So get an understanding of hip torque. Get this position. I want you to raise the ball of your foot. And all you're going to do with the ball of your foot is turn the foot like you're putting out a cigarette. Yeah? Putting out a cigarette. Brooklyn boxing gym, Everlast, call this crush the cockroach. Crush the cockroach. And what this is doing is, this foot turns to fire this knee, which reveals the immensity of that calf and my new tattoo. You're turning the foot to turn the knee. So think foot, knee. Then that in turn turns your hip. Foot, knee, hip. Just work some reps with me. Ready? Just going to turn, build up. Turn your foot, your knee, and your hip. Hand back. Turn. Hand back. Ignore your hands. Turn. So that's the connection of the kinetic chain. Foot, knee, hip. And what you leave behind is your shoulder. You allow a slight delay with your shoulder, so you can create what's called a recoil, like pulling back an elastic band and letting it go. Makes sense in your head or not? Yeah. Turning foot, knee, hip, lay on the shoulder, which creates a recoil and power and impact to come through what's called my transverse abdominis. So you know the rectus abdominis, nice pretty six pack. You might not have seen it for a while, James, but you know the one I mean.
He was there ages ago.
Right, well, that's the showy part. That's the purpose of that. Pelvis to sternum. Yeah, it's just this flexion motion. It doesn't really translate in the real world. What does translate in the real world is this kind of transverse turning motion, which you would use to rake someone out the way, which you would use to hit somebody or throw an implement, which you would use to hit somebody with something in your hand. Does that make sense? So the transverse core is parallel-like muscles deep inside, underlying, supporting the spine. So your transverse core, your obliques, your spina erecta, your lower back, to a degree your glutes, is your core. Think of your core as a round column. All power comes from transverse core. Indirectly via the feet, via the floor. Got it? So you are looking to go foot, knee, hip, shoulder, recoil, finally the shot. So it's like just a slingshot the shot in. I just want you to have a play with that. So I want you to do about 20 reps. Do 10 reps, work dominant side only first. Do 10 reps and make the shot straight, linear. Then do 10 reps and make the shot hook, angular. Try and confine the band too light, step out to increase the resistance. Does that make sense? If you find it too hard, step back to slacken it off. If it's all the way slack on the smallest band and you still find it too hard, what the fuck are you doing it? What I want you to do is just get a feel. Just get a feel. So you're going to step, and then find the optimum range for you. So at any point, I can freeze the motion for a photograph. Come back real slow. Kinesthetically, I'm feeling that linkage. Does that make sense? If it becomes so hard that I go and it pulls me back, then I'm not in control. You want somewhere in the middle. You want to go about 30 seconds with that feel. The best way to develop what's called proprioception or kinesthetic awareness or feel of what you're doing is to shut your eyes. It's not for everybody. So I want you to get on 1, 2 on there. Not there. And step forward so you feel good resistance. Then turn your foot, turn your hip, turn your knee and your hip, and then feel that little pull there. And as you feel that pull, push it to full extension and hold it. Keep everything tight. Your back foot should be up. You're on the ball of your foot. 30 seconds, pad. We're going to create a shock absorption system. So rather than hold the pad out here, so when he hits it, you get a rotator cuff injury, bring the pad in line with your shoulder here. Right? So my objective is to hit through this pad so that I hit his shoulder. My target's not the surface of this, it's here. And just to give him an extra nice shock absorption system, this is a little space from here, when that hits that, with each rep, I've met my goal. I'm going through. Does that make sense? I'm not going to out and draw it right out, but from here all you're going to do, from where you were, take that same linkage first and get a feel. Now I'm purposely making my shot after my body mechanic land at full extension. So I'm actually hitting this at the end. So if you think about this as 0 and the target as 10, I'm purposely landing on 10 for the purpose of demonstration. But what that would translate to in reality is when I hit him in the head, my energy spent as it hits his chin, which means it's not going through. There's no transference of shock or weight. But the reality is, if this is 0 and this is 10, then about in the middle here is 5. Where I would land this to hurt him or to do its job would be I would land on 5, which is about 3/4 of extension of my arm with 5 to go through my target. Does that make sense? So what I'm not doing is just hitting with my arm. Right? Some people can get a heavy shot with that. Naturally big boned, large people can. But if you actually hit with your body, you'll get a devastating shot, which is what you want. So you want foot, knee, hip. And there is a degree of dropping weight here. Shoulder, arm. Right? Yeah. That's what you want. You want to get about 10 shots with your dominant side so your partner starts to get irritated with holding the pad through. All we're cultivating here is the understanding of the linkage from the feet through the hands. This is what will give you a knockout blow. Make sense? Yep. So everyone get together. It could be a punch. It could be a palm. It could be a strike in the throat. It could be half a brick in the face. It could be a broken bottle in the face. It could be a blade in the face. It's not the drill bit. It's the delivery mechanic. That's what you want to know. Just looked at understanding was hip torque, hip twist. Right? What I want to show you now is what's called drop step. So during the 50s, a boxer called Jack Dempsey developed a method of hitting hard called the falling step, which many of you may have heard of. And basically all it done was put his entire body weight behind his shot. And the way he did it was, he pushed off the back foot. Remember, everything comes from the back foot. Just now, all coming from the back foot. Now, accelerating off the back foot. But rather than accelerate off the back foot, he would just kind of lean, nose over toes, and he would fall and then catch his weight. And this would be behind a timed jab into the face, which was called the Dempsey jolt, because it was like getting hit with a scaffold pole. And all he was doing was that, straight shot. So what made that so was his weight. The problem with the traditional falling step is it's a little slow and somewhat telegraphed, because you can see this lean full motion. So sometime later it was turned into what's called the drop step, which is basically the falling step on steroids. And all that happened is, instead of falling and originating weight, the back foot accelerated into the ground, which got you there much quicker. Does that make sense? To give you an understanding of that, we're going to use what's called a shoulder barge. So I'm going to barge into my partner's chest area with my shoulder and my head dropped. This actual motion has a combative application. So Peter Considine of the British Combat Association did a lot of third-party protection, executive protection. You get a principle, and let's say an overzealous crowd, could be fans, could be paparazzi, could be something else, could be hostile, and they were trying to encroach on the subject. Quite often he would just barge them out of the way as he moved the principle. Picture that in your head? It has an application, but it's a good exercise to show you, to teach you the drop step. If you've only got pads, you can put them on the wrong way, like so, here, and hold your own chest to create a platform for me to hit. If you've got something like that, which you're going to use, now hold this square to your body, top and bottom, so it's against your body. I've got a question for you, particularly anyone teaching. This drill gives you 3 things. It gives your student 3 things. Students, once you identify them. Notice how he stood flat-footed rather than braced. 2 reasons for that. One, if he's braced, he's in expectation of what I'm going to do, which he wouldn't be, right? Second thing, if he's braced, he's actually stanced up and ready to fight, which is a pre-threat cue. So you'll see in MMA, they're always stanced up like this. It's the working from a sporting platform. The platform in the street's very different. It's an emotional platform. And people don't stand there like this, and if they do, you want to hit them straight away, because you know the game's on. It's a more natural, intrusive position, hot stepping from one to the other, sucking hands out of the way, talking shit, which elicits in you an emotional response. Hence, it's an emotional platform. It's not a physical sport platform. Does that make sense? You always get out of the habit of starting this way. And if you get out of the habit of starting this way, what you're going to do now will have much more effect. Makes sense? Right, so first of all, make sure you check the substrate behind, that there's nothing sharp for him to fall on or hurt himself with. I'm not looking to make him fall, I'm just looking to make him stagger. When I barge into him, it's very important that I don't turn my body side on, because it's easy to scoot off and lose balance. I am looking literally from this squared position, just to drop body weight and shoulder into it. And I'm just going to accelerate off my back foot to do it. So if I just fell on him like that, with no power, no intention, he would move. If I did it with intention and actually just boom into him, he would move more significantly, greater impact. The best impact of all would be if he had a hostile approach to me at the exact same second that I boom barged into him. Now he will fold around me rather than bounce off me. Does that make sense? And that's what you're looking for. But for now, all I want you to do, accelerate off the back foot. You're aiming to plant your head and your shoulder somewhere on the pad. If it's not safe to use your head, just use your shoulder. But you're looking to accelerate and drop weight. You're not lifting up and stamping. I'm just lifting my foot enough not to trip myself over. I'm just literally going to drop, boom, body weight, and then back. And you can do it from a very small range, here, yeah? And what that translates to in a combative sense, you'll see in a minute. So if I was using a tool that required me to drop weight and hit it centre, then I don't need this big motion. I can still get a pretty decent effect just with a little step. So now just your shoulder. So lead side, here, boom, 5. About 5 goes and switch. Got it? Side underneath the pad here. Because what does that replicate? It replicates some matey coming up to him face on, man. How much more information on that do you need if he starts up? You should hit the cover. But there's 3 things that this drill, or this series of drill, is going to give you. Any idea what they are yet?
Space.
Space? Yeah, it's going to give you space, yeah. No, I mean in terms of developing. Right, so it's going to teach you what it feels like to sink impact into a target, as opposed to push it away. Big difference, right? That's one thing. It's going to cultivate the drop step. What else?
Kinetic energy.
Again?
Kinetic energy as well.
Yeah, you're developing kinetic energy. Here's the 3. Basically, it's going to develop the kinetic energy, drop step, and the depth of impact. It's giving you the skill. That's one thing it's giving you. Second thing it's giving you, as the person doing it, is familiarisation with hitting something. That's useful. And third thing it's giving you from the partner perspective is desensitisation to getting hit.
Yeah, being hit.
3 things. As an instructor, you need to know the whys and the hows of something that you're teaching. Yes? I know you.
Did you know, Jamie?
Right. So now we take this. Let's take the same drop step idea. Let's take the same drop step idea into a functional combative tool, strike. Right? So from close quarters, the elbows and knees are your bludgeoning weapons. They are the most destructive tools that you have. Right? They smash shit up. That's what they do. And if done with violence, they get shit done. Right? So the elbow, as we learn it in UC, is more of a Thai style slashing elbow. We use it in a lot of other ways. But the first couple of ways you're introduced to using the elbow is by spearing in with a lead elbow, particularly if you are covering as you crash forward. You should be familiar with that. When you do that, you'll always do that with very square shoulders. Right? So the first, that drill you just did with the shoulder, you're going to make more offensive. So from a door perspective, how I would employ this, I would employ it to pacify people. Do you understand what I mean by that? It's a pacifier. It's a chill the fuck out tool. Yeah? So The simplest way to deal with an aggressive person would be to disrupt his consciousness. Hits him somewhere in the head hard, that shakes the brain, switches off the computer. That's primary. Another way to stop somebody being dangerous would be to disrupt the breathing. So hit them in the throat with something sharp or choke them out. That's a higher level of use of force now. Sticking with the disrupting the breathing, we can also attack the centre of body mass. So for the street and combatives, it's the high line and the low line. That's primary. But if I'm teaching cops, security, close protection operatives, they need a much more low profile use of force. Does that make sense? So although the head may be a target as last resort, what's more likely as a target for lower level, low profile, will be centre of body mass, with the objective of disrupting their breathing or incapacitating the limb via a heavy, sharp, penetrative strike into a muscle. Does that make sense to you? But here what you're looking at doing is spearing. What I would do is I would just spike into the pectoral, shoulder area, or maybe the centre. Try and avoid the sternum. I showed a mate this on the door and cracked his fucking sternum, so you've got to be careful with it, right? So I would literally just drop this weight and plough the point of my elbow right into him like a battering ram on a medieval castle. Yeah? How you can get a feel for that without hurting him is to keep the arm flat and just drop in. But they still feel it. But I want you to use the spike. Right? So this is a spearing or spiked elbow. I'm literally just going to drop in and drive the tool into the centre of body mass. Now it would also be height disparity applicable. So most people of our average height, I'm most likely to target the chest and get the chest. But if he was by miracle somewhat fucking smaller than me, I'd probably get him in the face or in the throat. Or if it was one that I could get all three, what would differentiate me doing it from here, here, or here? What would make me change my target option? Right, so this is James. James, man. You remember James? You should do. He fucking was with me right at the beginning. Probably one of my oldest students. And I ain't seen him for about 5 years. But intermittently, 10, 15 years we trained. He fucking knew. You didn't say that. You didn't give. It's a question.
It was a question.
Oh yeah, question. So right, he said the level of threat. The level of threat will dictate the level of force you use. So the content of material I'm teaching you will be dictated by the context you find yourself in if you have to use it. Does that make sense? So for the purpose of this, we're thinking of it as a chill out tool. So all I want you to do from here is literally 100% drop your body weight and spike and then reset. Keep it nice and tight. Right, now if he goes 5 miles from me, like he just did, he will be disrupted in breathing and you'll get this kind of effect, this kind of thing. And this is where it was useful on the door, because I would spike in and say, you come back in, you're fucking down. Now fuck off, or you still got the legs to carry up. So I would enhance what I've just created in terms of his pacification with a strong verbal, physical boundary that suggests consequence if he tries again. Does that make sense? And that works really well with pissheads. Fucking really well. If he was to still be combative at that point from here, then my range to do anything else with my hands is not there. So I would now branch to cover low before I came apart, if I was to follow up. But where this tool works best is at confinement. So imagine being in an elevator. So if I was to, just grab the spike there. Where? If I was to spike him from here, I'm pinning him to the wall, which means he's now in range for my knockout shot, which will follow. Does that make sense? So, understand the spearing elbow will make the person move. It works best for you if he's got nowhere to go. But the purpose of me teaching you this drill is only to give you body mechanics. Does that make sense? So you're going to do 5. You're going to go here, drop weight and feel it. Here, drop weight and feel it. And if you want to try one, where he's running at you, to get that collision, get a feel of that. But be careful. Make sure you put the pads in the correct place. Don't want no injuries at this point, alright? Just going to the hospital nowadays is not as easy as it was. Yes? Let's go. Slap it from here. So, 75% of the impact for that shot is going to come from hip torque. But I am going to move in the direction of the strike somewhat. And when I do, my weight will settle as I hit the target. So about 25% of the power for that shot, to make up 100%, comes from drop step. So 75% hip torque, 25% drop step. Conversely to that, hitting him with a palm, or a rear elbow, or a downward hammer fist shot, 75% of the impact for that strike is going to come from drop step. And literally on the last section of it, the last quarter extension, I'm going to turn my hip. Does that make sense? So it's a combination of both. So what you want to do now is put both of those together. I'm going to keep this nice and tight here. And what I need you to do now probably is work in 3. Because I need a wall behind your subject. So just going to just literally press your arms on it. And stop this movement so much, it's going to buckle. So what I want to do from here, drop weight, then I want to make an attachment, which would be his garment, and then from here I'm going to put in 1 with your arm, 2 elbows. Yeah? So I'm going drop step, kick torque, combining the 2. Yeah? Right, I need to check the movement pattern of my feet. Right? So, whatever foot I've got forward, the rear foot turn on its heel. What we're looking at here is transference of body mechanics via hip torque. So this is where power comes from. I'm using this left hand. It comes from here. Step. So the first thing that happens, I'm in a bladed position, I would accelerate off this foot. I'll get out a sprinting block, and I will move in the direction of the strike, which in the case of this slapping type motion would be this direction. I'm slapping this direction. I'm going through the head. I'm not slapping at the head, I'm slapping through the head. So I'm accelerating off this back foot, exploding off this back foot, dropping weight as I land. Accelerating, dropping weight, accelerating, dropping weight. Or my feet are relatively stationary and I'm just going to torque off the back foot. Torque, so instead of accelerating forward, I'm driving the heel into the ball of the foot into the ground, I'm sharply turning the heel, which turns this knee, which then, as I accumulate a step to that, so a step and I turn, a step and I turn, so a tiny step, just here, here. As I step and I turn, this then fires the hips, and the weapon on the shoulder will be left behind to create a recoil, as we'll see. From your perspective, right dominant side, back, feet bladed, you're going to accelerate off this back foot, heel slightly up, accelerate forward and drop body weight. Drop body weight. Literally foot comes lightly off the ground and settles. Dempsey's falling step was lean catch. From here, instead of lean full catch and slide, accelerate off the back foot, accelerate, which throws your weight forward. Then this foot has to land solidly, otherwise land on your face. This is a drop step. Right now back to hip torque. So from here, the foot is going to turn in on the ball of the foot like I'm putting out a cigarette. What the Brooklyn boxing gym call crush the cockroach. Turning the foot, which turns the knee, which fires the hip. A little step, moving in the direction of the shot. This is where power comes from for any angular shot. Whether it's a slap, a forearm shot, hook, hit with a stick, slash with a knife, comes from there. Any type of linear, straightforward shot, again, off the back foot, comes in a central forward direction. You're not going forward, per se, you're more moving slightly to the flank every time you move. That's what you're doing. So any straight linear shot is about 75% drop step, and then when you land, about 25% hip torque. So this motion. Whereas any kind of angular shot, like a slap, is 75% hip torque, and about the last 25% drop weight. So think about when you strike, right? Distance and range is crucial for a knockout shot. You must get depth. So whenever you train on any piece of kit, don't hit at the kit, hit through the kit. Right? So in pad combat, we feed you a flat straight shot, arms here, the wrist is up, the elbow's down, hands back of the hand, height of the shoulder or slightly above, and this hand power assists. Now you've got an absorption system to bleed off impact, so you don't jam up your rotator cuffs. Right? But the student's told, there's the pad, but your target is the shoulder. So hit through. So how do you hit through? Think about any shot as a distance. Let's say it's 10 inches. Right? Whatever 10 inches looks like. You are starting at 0 and you are finishing at 10. So 10 would be when this limb is almost extended, almost. Yeah? Well, if the target's a 10 and I hit from a range that lands on 10, the energy is dispersed, it's gone. So I need to move forward. Accelerating off the back foot and moving forward allows me to land on the target around 5. So if this is 0, starting point, this is 10, and this is 5. I want to explode off my feet or hip torque off my feet and land the tool at about a range of 5. Yeah, as it's gathering maximum momentum for the further 5, it goes through his head. So there's elements to a preemptive strike that make it a knockout strike. But basic weight transference and body mechanics comes from the drop step or from the hip torque. There's a variety of drills that you can do to work on both.